Welcome to another episode of Talk to the Fedora, chatting about hard-hitting, honest entrepreneur wisdom that you can use to grow your small business. I'm your host, Jarrod Goldsmith from eSAX Virtual Events, and today we're very pleased to be welcoming Alessio Monterosso. Alessio is a driven serial entrepreneur who has been relentlessly working on creating sustainable and creative enterprises in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, with the intention of blooming them into worldwide recognizable brands. Arriving from Italy in 2013, Alessio has launched multiple businesses and has been involved in many community volunteering roles, including chairing the board of directors at the Ottawa Italia Festival. He currently chairs the market expansion and market strategy plans for Rolled Up Dessert Lounge, runs his own wealth management agency, is the CEO of Ariana Spices, and likes investing in meaningful NFT projects. Alessio, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You having me here, actually. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Alessio, we met not too long ago, and I was just blown away by talking to a serial entrepreneur such as yourself. So let's talk a bit about your background. How did you become such an entrepreneur?
What really started off for me was a few years after I came to Canada, so that's about 7 to 8 years ago now. I started a job as a financial advisor. And you really understand the importance of networking. You understand the importance of relationships, building your, it's also called social capital. And so when you understand that at the base of business, the the network you build, it's really what's going to make you, especially when you're starting from a smaller business, and not an international scale right away. You really understand the importance of connections. So starting as a financial advisor, I had to get out there, I had to grind, I had to network to get to know more people, right? To be able to talk about financial advising. And that was really my first taste of sales job. Was the first taste of running a business. It is really.
Yeah. Did you have a background in entrepreneurship growing up in Italy?
So I wouldn't. So I did go, like, the high school that I did in Italy was that I went to in Italy. It was business focused for sure. It's always been something in me because I have to say my mom and dad were I come from a family of entrepreneurs. They started their own business as well in Italy, and it did very well. Um, so I've always been exposed to this kind of conversation about business, and money since I was a kid. But I really think that what sparked it for me, is this funny story that I say often, which is, back in kindergarten, we we had a lot of pine trees in our yard, and a lot of times you would find these pines on the floor, and they would crack open, and pine nuts will come out. I'm talking about probably 20 years ago. And you had this, and so once you break them, they're delicious. So what we did is we understood that, if I have something that people want, and you have something else that other people want, well, then you exchange them. Then all of a sudden, pine nuts became the currency to exchange goods amongst us since a very young age. So I think that that's what really the first taste of what business really means, which is at the basic, most fundamental level. Business is that. Business helps you, get goods and services to people that cannot get them themselves.
Right. Wow. To understand that in kindergarten, there's no reason, no wonder why you're such a serial entrepreneur today. What an experience that is.
Thank you, Jaron. Thank you. It is one of my favorite stories, as I said.
Absolutely. And your family, were they very entrepreneurial? Like, did you grow up in a household
Yes.
understanding business?
Yeah. I did grow up in a household where, business was the my mom and dad's business was what built everything they had. So I have to say, growing up, I grew up quite comfortable. I don't have any sad story about my upbringing. It's always been nice. However, growing up in Italy presented its challenges, and I didn't want to follow anybody else's footsteps. I wanted to create my own way of doing business, from what I've learned. And so coming here, then I started my own. But I definitely have to thank them if I have this sort of inclination as well to business. Yeah.
Right, right. And how did you find the entrepreneur community in Ottawa? Has it been easier, more difficult to start a business than, let's say, in Italy?
Well, I say, I feel blessed to have the opportunity to come to Ottawa, Canada in general, because I think Canada it's a very good country, and you realize only when you're, especially when you're coming from somewhere else. But yes, definitely, I would have not been able to do what I did here in Ottawa, uh, in the last 9 years if I were to, if I stayed in Italy, if I've never moved. So it is Ottawa. It's a very good. It has a very dynamic landscape of professionals and businesses, and it's growing.
Yeah. Something you mentioned earlier when you were in kindergarten, you were collecting the pine nuts and exchanging goods and services for what people need. How was that translated for entrepreneurship, for collaboration? Like, how important is the concept of collaboration for you as an entrepreneur?
So I love the question because it is something that I advocate. So, I had good collaborations and I had bad collaborations. Some people get very touched and moved by a collaboration that failed, and they get into a kind of mood where they're like, no, collaborations, which I also call partnerships. All right, so for
Right.
me they're kind of very similar in nature, and interchangeable in this case, that they think that it's better to do it alone, and not in business. Well, I don't believe in that, even though I've been burnt by partnerships and collaborations. I feel that if you do find, out of 10, even if it went wrong and two went right, those two will make up for the other eight. So I think it's crucial. I think collaborating, it'll get you 10 times further than if you weren't collaborating.
Right, right, and because the podcast features entrepreneurs and community leaders, how what type of knowledge would you pass on to help people learn how to collaborate better? I mean, everybody, you're not alone. That collaboration sometimes don't work out, but what knowledge would you provide people on perhaps they're starting to collaborate for the first time with others?
Right, 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 right. Absolutely. So, well, the first thing which I think is a universal truth is that, um, there's always you always never know until you try. So obviously, I'm gonna share some of the common traits that I look for nowadays for partnerships and collaborations. But there is always the universal law of until you try it, you won't know. Okay. So with that being said, what I believe, people should, when it's the first time collaborating, what do you look for? Well, as I said, there are some common traits. Definitely, you want to find somebody that, they do what they say they were gonna do. I think that's one of the most important thing. I think nowadays it's an asset in partnerships, that should definitely be there. All right, because you have to make sure that if your partner says, if your collaborator says, I'm gonna do this, you want to make sure it's done. Right. That's number one. So, and that sometimes you see it from the smallest things. Right. It's on the smallest things that you actually see the true color of people because they show you how much importance they give it to. So definitely find somebody, in partnerships that's gonna do what they say. So that's definitely one. The other thing you want to look for into partnership, I believe, is, you figure out what you need to do to get this business, right? To get this idea into into business, and you divide it into many things, each different steps of what needs to get done, and you start thinking, okay, which ones do I know how to do? Okay, I know how to do 4 out of 10. Awesome. Which ones is it worth me paying for directly, a third party? Okay, well, there's 3 out of 4. Well, that's 7. The last 3 are A, too expensive, B, hard to outsource. So what you could do is try to find, and obviously it's not like a hunt. I'm on the hunt for a business partner. I mean, it does happen as well, obviously in businesses, but you really want to then start thinking about, is there anybody I know that will be able to fulfill those 3 out of 10, things that are left to do. And if they excel at it, and they're people that are trustworthy, people that do what they say they were gonna do,
Yeah.
then it's definitely starting a conversation.
Well, that's a
And
very
never,
important.
no, and I was going to say, just never be afraid of being the one starting the conversation.
Yeah, the whole concept of collaboration is a funny issue because a lot of people think they know everything about their business. They don't want to outsource because it's going to cost them money and they might not have such resources.
Right.
But like you said, and I agree with you, we get farther when we work together because not you don't have all of the answers. I don't have all the answers, but people who we trust might. And like you said, like the smaller details, that's how people are defined. Like, because it's your name, that your brand is on the line. If your partner falls through,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely. And that's exactly why I say, find somebody that, they do what they say they were going to do.
right, right, and actually that leads well to our next topic of networking. You mentioned when you were a financial advisor how the importance of networking was to develop those relationships, that rapport in the community. And now as an entrepreneur, you're out in the community, you're starting businesses all the time. I can't keep track. And how does networking play into that?
Um, Networking, I think it's kind of fundamental. Especially, it's fundamental, especially if you're starting out in your business. Because networking is not just a matter of meeting somebody that you can sell your product to. Sometimes it's meeting somebody that has something that you haven't thought of, or you might have thought of. Could go both ways. That will do the 3 out of 10. Sometimes you'll meet somebody at a networking event that's going to end up being your next business partner, or you can end up, So I think I think here there's another universal law, which is, you know, if you don't go out there and get the opportunity will hardly come to you. It could, but will hardly come to you. So networking events, again, it represents a way to simply, you just never know who you're gonna meet at the next networking event. It might not be a customer, it might not be a client, but it might be your business partner. It might be your collaborator. So definitely, I highly encourage networking events.
Yeah, you started off that question by saying, it's not always about finding a client. And I think that's one of the biggest differentiators between people who use networking as a sales tool and those who are in it trying to develop that rapport, that communication collaboration. Further on that, Alessio, let's talk about the networking tips. You walk into a room full of strangers. What do you do?
I love it because I guess I wish I had something that I do all the time the same way, but no, I guess I do actually. So what I usually tend to do is I tend to understand the landscape of the place I'm in. All right, so whether it's I need to understand where the washrooms are, where the bar is, or the basic functionalities of the place. That also gives me a chance to kind of understand also the landscape of the room. Are there groups already being formed? Are people tend to hang out at the coffee section? Do people, you start to understand patterns, and so what I tend to do is I tend to avoid groups that have already formed because I don't want to slam into a conversation that has already started. So I tend to find, somebody that um, probably it's alone, or they're putting themselves a coffee, or they're getting a glass of water, and I always go for eye contact. So eye contact right away to understand that there's been a first set of communication. It's what allows you to then start the conversation. And sometimes all you gotta do is smile. People don't see a lot of those nowadays. So sometimes it's as easy as a smile will get a conversation started. Like, look at me and you, Jarrod, right? Classic example of our by a networking event. We got to energy tends to attract other energy, right? I don't know if you believe in the universal law of attraction. I do. And so, people vibrating at the same kind of energy tend to then eventually meet each other and up into us. And now, we're here. You give me an opportunity to, be at eSAX, and I love it. And I'm excited for this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alessio. I mean, at a networking event, most people are shy and introverted. There's a lot of introverts out there who are
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, but being personable and easily accessible, and like you said, smiling, the eye contact, that's so underrated that people
Yeah.
don't realize how important that is. Those are some very good tips. Thank you for sharing.
Of course, my pleasure.
Alicia, when you started all of these businesses, did you have a mentor or a coach that you bounced ideas off?
So the answer is funny that you say that. The answer is yes, but not necessarily. I did not hire a coach for the simple reason that I'm someone that likes to try things himself first and tell you how I felt. Even though somebody can tell me sometimes, there's some of those things that you really have to do yourself.
Right.
But because I've always been a big collaborator, right? I found myself a business partner. This is probably 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And this business partner is not just somebody that is a very smart business person, because you can find those, I don't want to say easily, but you can find them. I partnered up with him because he had a side of he had a perspective on business and in life slightly different than mine, a bit more I would say mature in a way where not that I'm immature, but mature in a way where he mastered being patient, and I've always struggled a bit more with that, because I always wanted to go get it now. Tomorrow, if you ask me when do you want to become a millionaire, the answer is tomorrow for me, right? But that means that it won't happen tomorrow, but at least it'll happen sooner than later. Where he knows that there's a process for everything. So
Right.
he taught me the discipline. He taught me the discipline in being able to be patient at the same time. And so I decided to open what's called a holding company, a holdco. So most of the businesses that I end up investing or starting actually get owned by one company, and that one company shares a business partner. That business partner, it's also somebody that at the end of every meeting, at the end of every successful or unsuccessful meeting, the fact that I had the chance to communicate to him what happened and get a fresh set of eyes on it, it really allowed me to be able to take more. So when people say, "Oh my God, you run all these businesses, you shouldn't. There's too many." I understand where they're coming from. However, what they don't know is the fact that I'm not alone. I always have partners.
Right. That's very important. Again, it speaks back to that collaboration that
Yeah,
we talked earlier.
absolutely.
Yeah. And what about branding tips? Alicia, you have many different businesses. How do you keep all of the branding consistent?
So branding is I love branding. Branding means much more than people might think the word branding could mean. Branding is basically your communication style. It's all communication. Communication is indeed 50% of your idea at the end of the day, because if you're not effective at communicating it,
Yes.
people will not understand it. So branding, it also means giving life to an idea. It also means giving eyes and a face and a soul and hands and legs to something that otherwise it's just out there. It's there. Sometimes you can't even see it unless it's real estate. And how do you translate that there in the thing or the business into a brand? It's by giving it an identity. So branding, it really means I identify by just looking at this brand, you can understand my ethic, my values, you should be able to understand what kind of style, what kind of product, what I'm trying to say to you, and with which intensity as well. So
Yeah.
branding is beautiful. Branding is as I said, it's very cool. It's crucial for businesses, and you should think about before you start a business about that. What kind of branding do I want to give it? Do I want to give it a serious tone? Do I want to give it a more 80s tone? Do I want to give it a more professional tone? So it's all branding. It's a
So
branding, and it's important.
would you say that the concept of branding is more an emotional idea on how people perceive it?
Absolutely, absolutely. To the point where I believe in, I would love one day to, follow a bit more the studies around branding, because there's a lot of, there must be a lot of neuroscience connected with branding, psychology of consumers, of buyers, and it's all related, right? So it's good to get it right. It's very good to get it right, because you don't realize, but people, by just looking at your brand, by just looking at a few things, that's the first impact your eyes see before your ears can hear. So basically, you want to make sure that you want to make sure you're on top of the branding. Absolutely.
Right. Maybe there'll be another business idea down the road for you one of these days. I'd be happy to chat more about that. I love it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always, I always have ears for that. That's fascinating.
Alessio, we can't talk about business without talking about money and cash flow. So, are you able to share some tips on how entrepreneurs can manage their cash flow?
Absolutely, absolutely. I do. I am a financial. I'm a financial planner nowadays, so I still do my. I speak money in different ways on a daily basis, both on a business level and on an individual level. What I can absolutely say is that, whether you're starting a business, you're an entrepreneur, or you're an individual, the first thing to have clear with money is what kind of the relationship you have with money. So think about that for a moment. Are you working? Are you living because you want to get to a certain amount of money, or are you working and are you living and because money is just it's what will buy you the experience, right? So when you're gone, all you're gonna have left and what you're gonna leave behind is the experiences, how you made people feel, not how much money you left in the bank account. So at the end of the day, what people have to chase is experience and not money. So that's kind of rule number one, universal rule number one. Establish that. There's different ways entrepreneurs, business people should manage their money. It starts from understanding the relationship of debt, credit, and savings, right? I say this a lot. When people think about debt, we've always told that it's the big bad wolf. That it's not good. Oh my God, debt. No, no, no. Which is ties also to the word credit. Sometimes it's kind of like banks use the word credit to say, take it, and then it's a debt.
Yeah.
However, not all debts are bad. Not all credits are good or bad. It depends. It depends how you use them. Debt could be good if used the right way. That it's something that it's, you have to see it as a possibility that the country you're in, the set of rules that the country established a banking system. The banking system works, and the banking system is also trusting you to give you money in advance, which is also called debt credit, which becomes debt when it's not repaid, when it's being used and not repaid. So credit is a good thing. Credit means you're doing good. Debt, if it's repaid on time, it's the byproduct of using your credit, which again in itself it's a privilege that you even have access to it. You can't give it for granted. That gives you the possibility that if you have zero, is gonna say, I'll give you 3. And if you're smart to turn that 3 into 6, all of a sudden you've paid back the 3, and now you went from 0 to 3.
Yeah.
What in that logic? It's bad. Nothing, right? It's only bad if you spend 3 just for the sake of spending 3, and you're not working to making 6. Now all of a sudden you had 0, now you have -3. Now that's bad, right? So education, that's for education. It's not about that. It's that into you're investing in yourself. One day you'll make tenfold that money back, right? So that's one. Savings. Another thing is savings. How do you treat savings? So, there's some planners that are of the opinion that, if you're making, let's say, 100, right? And you're spending for your basics 95, the 5 You just save it. Okay. If you do that, it'll take you my 20 years to maybe get to 1,000. Let's just assume. But there's also another, there's also another train of thoughts that I believe in, which is what I've done, which is that 5. I sometimes thought, should I save it and maybe make 1%?
But
Or
is
should I,
that something you put back into your businesses?
whether it's into your businesses, whether it's into yourself, you put it back so that 5 can generate eventually 10, that 10 eventually 20, the 20 eventually 40, and so on and so forth. So one day we'll get to 10,000 in those 20 years instead of 1,000, right? Now, it doesn't mean everything you make, go spend it. No, it means work with somebody probably that can help you figure out where to invest the 5.
Right.
And
right.
how to best invest the 5.
Oh, with your background, especially being a financial advisor and an entrepreneur, wow. Well, I mean, we could talk another hour on this, but we do have to start moving on.
Sure, you're right. Absolutely.
Alessio, thank you for sharing some of those tips. What about the concept of processes? I mean, being an entrepreneur with multiple businesses, I'm sure you have a range of processes that you follow.
Absolutely. Processes are very important. They should be followed. Obviously, there's always the exception to it. But the sooner you can establish which process you need to get to your objective, and the sooner it means you are quantifying the steps required to get to your goal, right? So a goal, it's a goal. A dream, it's a dream. It doesn't become an object. It doesn't become an action plan. It doesn't become, until you establish which processes are needed to get to that point.
Would you say that it doesn't matter what genre of business people launch, there are some processes that are similar across entrepreneurship, or is each one
Absolutely.
individual?
There are some processes, as I said, there are some common processes that I would say, regardless of the business you're in, they should be done. Processes such as the planning process, the research process. So research, fundamental process. The planning stage, fundamental process. The action stage, it's also another fundamental process. And there's probably more that I'm not thinking of right now. But the sooner you can get those processes, and the sooner you can automate those processes as well.
Automation is very important. Can you talk a bit more about that, please?
Absolutely. So automation, it's really going to help, again, to own multiple businesses. You have to get to a point where things are automated. At the beginning, you need to understand. So there's a few trials needed. You need to do it, understand what are the things you want to automate out of the process that are worth automating the processes. That being said, then you figure out how to automate them. Softwares are awesome for that. Softwares are awesome for automation. And there's sometimes the problem with that is a lot of people don't do that is because it's hard to understand the software, or it's hard to understand what tools you have to automate. I've done something in my businesses, and it's really changed a lot of things, which is I got myself some virtual assistants. I don't know if you've ever used the service, but virtual assistants are obviously are vetted by somebody that makes sure that they know what they're doing, and they'll help you find those softwares and how to automate them to make sure that things run smoothly. Bookkeeping should be automated. Payroll should be automated. A lot of things you can automate. You should, and there's a lot of, as I said, there's lots of softwares that can help you with that.
Right, Alessio, would you say that automation and outsourcing are similar or different?
Automation and outsourcing, I would say that they're different, not necessarily, but they are. One of them comes after the other. They're subsequent. So you outsource, and then you choose the outsourcing party to be able to have automation in their service, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be one or another. but I think that it starts from understanding how to outsource it, and then figuring out if there's a way to automate that outsourcing as well. And AI nowadays, it's making that easier for us. Yes, it can do damage, but it can also, again, help you automate things. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, going back to the process of automation or like processes, how have you changed because of COVID? Let's say for rolled up or Ariana spices.
So, you know, well, you're talking to somebody that opened a hospitality business during COVID. So, I definitely have there's lots of different views on that. I am on the view of again, one of the universal laws to me is anytime there's something, quote unquote, catastrophic or something that really changes, the reality or the environment we're in, such as COVID, there's always room for opportunity as well. And I don't say that in a way which is take advantage of who's suffering. Absolutely not. But it comes from how do I become more efficient and how do I become more, I guess, more bulletproof in different ways. So for me, the COVID represented a way of understanding which new limitations do we have. I definitely realized that the hospitality business took a big hit from it, but not all businesses, right? So my Ariana Spices business, if anything, went higher because I'm working on the natural products section of things and immune systems. And COVID is all about, a lot of it has to do with, you have to, regardless of what your train of thought is, immune system plays a big role. You want that to be strong regardless of what's it called. As far as rolled up goes, actually, because you still are paying some of the effects of that. We started as a pop-up, and therefore not restrictions applied during COVID on our outside business. So it didn't impact us then. And then we were lucky enough to being able to find our big retail store once things were kind of over.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I mean, with all of these businesses, how do you manage time? Are you able to speak a little bit about the elusive time management?
So absolutely. So again, automation, and processes are really meant to help you with time management. That's the fundamental thing you get out of it. What it actually means, though, it's more than time, because people think time management is kind of secondary. Well, if you think about it, once you get to your maximum kind of, once you max out the amount of things you can do in those set amount of hours, the only variable you can change at this point, it's time. If you had more time, you could do more things. And what's the only way at one point to save on time, which means at one point more money, is how efficient you are, how automated you are, and how many processes you have into place, right? I refer back to the find yourself virtual assistants, and that's things that, part of the reason why I choose to go into business consulting is because I've now experienced all of this and I know where to find all of these resources. And again, virtual assistant will help you find time, or assistance in general, right? I say virtual just because it's less, it costs less due to the fact that it's virtual and you're not paying for the real estate component of it. But definitely you want to try to get very effective with your day, with your time.
Yeah,
You gotta go to the gym. You have to exercise. That's important to be successful even in business at the end of the day, right? And you can only do that if you're very organized with your time. That will allow you to do that as well, especially when you're running multiple businesses.
right. I found it interesting that you brought up many of the speaking points we've already talked about when you come up with time management tips. The collaboration, the branding, the networking, the coaching, all of these come into play when we want to talk about having that work-life balance that
Absolutely.
most of us want to have, but we don't live it yet.
Absolutely. You're 100% right. And the whole thing, a lot of thing about the entrepreneurship and being your own business owner is the fact that you want to manage your own time. But that independence it comes with the price of, if you're not good at it,
Yeah.
it will actually make you fail.
It's funny, Alessio. It's a pet peeve of mine when I hear new entrepreneurs. I say, "Oh, why did you want to launch a business?" Yeah, I want to make $1 million by the time I'm 30. I want to have my 3-day work week. So, good luck. I hope it happens. But there's a lot of work between now and then.
There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work, and it kind of feels like it almost feels like it never ends, because
Yeah.
things evolve, and you have to evolve with things, and sometimes you have to take a bit of a a little bit of a shave in terms, then like you take a step back to go 3, you go another one to take 3. So sometimes you just have to understand. That it takes time. There's a process. Trust it, and it does come down to that. You just don't give up.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to be around other entrepreneurs. Many of us are facing similar issues in different parts of our businesses, and we should be learning and collaborating with each other. Again, using that
Absolutely.
word collaboration. Alessio, there's no doubt that you've had many successes in business or personal. What are some of the successes you're most proud of?
Some of the successes I'm most proud of. So, despite the fact that I've kind of wanted to take a break from the hospitality business during COVID, I am proud of one of the hospitality business I started and nurtured, which it was actually a pandemic idea rooftop. So it was open. It was on the open air. That's why it was during the pandemic, because you had less restriction on the outside. So it was outside the business, which allowed me to kind of work with those restrictions, right? You always have to find a way to work with things. And so it was a hospitality business. It was on Presto Street, Little Italy, which I'm Italian, so for me, it always felt like home. And it was intense, very intense, a very intense moment. I've learned a lot. But at the same time, I probably brought in the span of 7 months, a place to be fully packed on a Saturday, the dinner service and the post-dinner service as well. Um, it was kind of, again, it's not what made me rich at all. At the end of the day, actually, it wasn't really even any cash flow positive because of the complexity of running something like that during COVID. But it was probably very big. I still get emails, even though I closed it. I still get emails to ask for reservation. I still get followers on Instagram, even though it's been closed for more than a year. So it tells you that the brand stayed with people, which that for me it's a success in itself. Because success can mean lots of different things, right? So I would say that, and then also like one of my successes that I like the most is coming up with, being able to come up with a business such as Ariana Spices. So, using natural herbs and spices to really find ways to help people get better. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that, actually. There's a lot of positive reinforcement that comes out of it. And so I'm really proud of where that is now.
Well, that's a very big
And yeah,
success in itself. Many people, I think, at one point realize, call it wisdom, that what they do is changing lives for a business as an entrepreneur. And like for Ariana, that's exactly what you're doing.
yeah, absolutely, and that's why it's kind of like I decided to take a bit more of a active step in it. That's why I decided to take on as a CEO role
Right.
full time, because I do feel it needs with the right love, it can do. It has a lot of good karma and potential.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the other side of the coin is some of the challenges, the failures that you might have had. Are you able to talk about some of the resiliency, the adapting, the work-life balance, like some lessons learned that our listeners can hear about?
Definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, I always think about when you're paying a lot for consulting services, when you're paying a lot for things, sometimes it's because you're paying for those failures, right? You're paying for those failures because now you don't have to do them. You can get directly to You go directly to the phase of this is gonna work instead of let me try it first. So you're getting a shortcut. You're saving yourself time, and you're saving yourself a lot of black hair, right? uh, so you pay for that a lot of times. My first failure was in the hospitality business, but the failure was a combination of but I would say 80% fault of a bad collaboration, a bad partnership. That really made things go south. And then everything else to get to a point where if you're not happy doing what you do every single day, you're gonna be miserable. And doesn't matter if you make money or not. I just feel like when it's like that, I just want to run away.
Yeah, yeah.
So I learned some of those common traits that I want to avoid when meeting somebody else, a potential collaborator, a potential partner. I'm able to see, okay, if I see this now, it's not gonna be a successful partnership. We're not gonna get along, right? So it's one of those things where it helped me figure out a lot of that. It helped me figure out a lot of how business works, right? So how to set up a point of sale, to how to build a business, to how to market a business, to social media, to bringing people in. You understand how many things there are, and then you realize, okay, maybe I should find myself a partner for the next venture that's also do this, and that, right? Operational managers or operational partners, however you want to call them, I feel like they're probably like either it's yourself or you find a partner that is. Never leave the operation side up to management to be formed one day, because it means less consistency. It means if the person quits because nothing ties them to the business other than a salary, they can go for a higher salary somewhere else, and now all of the knowledge into operating, it has to be retaught again.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is really valuing your staff, your employees, to have them grow with the business.
Absolutely, to the point where if they become fundamental for operation, you might want to get them in business with you. You offer them shares, right? I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer at this point in my life to understand that after I've seen it so many times. But some people struggle with that. And when they think about, oh my God, I have to give 2% of my shares, 5% of my shares to somebody, they freak out. But at the end of the day, you have to understand those shares are worth nothing if somebody's not willing to pay for it.
Yeah, yeah. Or if the business is going to be falling apart in 2 years because they leave.
Absolutely. Or to make your life hell, and you're gonna have to go work in the business because, right? So
Yeah.
find yourself somebody, unless it's yourself, that will be your operational manager, your operational partner.
Right, right.
If it needs one, obviously. If it's a software-based company, different discussion.
Sure, sure. I mean, talking about the challenges, Alessio, there's no doubt that COVID's had a proportional impact, especially on entrepreneurs, those in the hospitality industry. What about mental health? How would you advise, give some feedback, some knowledge for entrepreneurs dealing with mental health issues?
So, well, it is obviously a very, I don't know. I'd say it is a very big. It's kind of a big area of conversation, right? So what I can say is like, me too, myself as well. I've dealt with mental issues, especially during COVID. Anxiety kicks in. All of a sudden, you don't know if it's called all of a sudden you don't know if you're depressed or what. Even though I've always been, and most people are always been, even if you have a very extroverted character, right? Things sometimes get challenging mentally. So I think the best thing to do as a prevention and as intervention, you want to exercise. Nature. I found every time I'm losing contact with reality, nature brings you back to the grounding. Food. Eating the right foods. Foods are important. Foods regulate your hormones. Hormones regulate your sleep cycle. Hormones regulate the amount of cortisol that you have in your body and how stressed you're gonna be. Right? At the same time, also, processes. Having a to-do list every single day that you can physically visually see that you've accomplished a task, it gives you endorphins. It will make you feel better. Organizing your house. So when you do something, action, it's what drives people. It's what really going to help you sometimes get out of that procrastination phase. It's
Yeah, so
action.
it's like those achievable goals. It doesn't matter if it's, make your bed in the morning. As long as you write it down, you cross it off at the end of the day.
Even sometimes it can be, you have to call Bell because your bill has been higher than usual for the past 2 months, and you always forget about calling Bell, and you start getting frustrated because just do it. Just do it. It'll be okay. You'll feel better. You'll do another task because you feel better, and then you feel even better, and you do another task, and then you do another task, and then you feel satisfied. We're humans. We need goals. Yeah.
Yeah, and getting out for walks and exercise and treating yourself
Absolutely.
as
Yeah,
the
fundamental.
really important. So, Alessio, we're getting to the end of our segment today. What about what's next for you? Where do you see yourself in a few years from now?
Lovely question. Well, what my goal is in the next 2 years, it's literally try to basically. So I love Ottawa. I love Canada. The cold is hit. It takes a toll on me, right? So my ideal scenario would be, being able to enjoy the summer and the spring in Ottawa with my businesses, um, being able to work from home. I have a family and I want to spend time with my family. And then in the winter, go somewhere warm. The sun is a big factor when it comes down to mental health as well. Talking
Right.
about mental health, right? Sun. So I like to go. I really like to being able to move, right? Being able to be flexible with my schedule, being able to move, and being able to. If I decide tomorrow I want to experience X, be financially ready to experience X,
Right.
right? So I don't know about how much money I want. I don't know. I don't know. It could be any number. What I want to know though is I'll make sure that if I want that X experience, I can afford it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Alicia, what about some words of wisdom for others who are perhaps thinking of starting a business?
Words of wisdom for others. They're
Yeah.
thinking to start a business. Um, Words of wisdoms are sit down, figure it out, research the current landscape based on what you want to do. So do a bit of research, and then sit down and try to understand what are the steps needed to start it. Once you get it on paper, make sure you can see it though, not in your head. You gotta be able to see it. Then start saying, what can you do? What can't you do? And start figuring out, do you want to collaborate? And if the answer is yes, by collaboration, you can make it better, allow it to naturally happen.
Mhm.
Don't force it, but allow it to happen, which means be open to conversations, be nice. You have to be nice. People that are not nice, they gain small small popularity for a short period of time. At the end of the day, you wanna be nice because you wanna be in a business that gives out that it's helping the world somehow. At least that's how I feel. So yeah, I think the magic word for today is collaborating. Partnerships.
Agreed. Alicia, how can somebody get in touch with you, please?
Instagram is definitely a good way because you have a link to be able to book a free consultation if you want 30 minutes. We chat about what's your idea, what were you thinking of doing, and let me come up with a plan, and then you can I can help you as a consultant, or if I like the business, I can become a partner in the business to help you start the business. It all depends on how we like the idea and what's entailed in the idea. Instagram is the best way to probably one of the best ways to reach out. Email as well, and again, you'll find everything on my link tree. Link on my Instagram.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'd like to thank you, Alessio Monterosso, for joining us on Talk to the Fedora. We hope that this segment has provided some wisdom that you can use to grow your small business. Please subscribe to our eSAX YouTube channel and be sure to check out the hundreds of other videos we have for some great entrepreneurial content. Alessio, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jarrod, for having me. Again, awesome. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.